Hey there, it's Jenna here. So, I am so excited to announce this design assistant that I have been programming and building and testing for the past 6 months or so, and I use literally daily. So, this design assistant you can now use because you just have instant access. So, what I have trained it to do is basically take all of the information that I received through my onboarding questionnaire. If you haven't checked that out, go see what types of questions I'm asking because it kind of sets me up a little bit better for this process and generating, conceptual imagery. So I take that information and then anything that I've written in notes from, the onboarding process of learning about the project and the client. So I take all that information. This one is a hyper abbreviated version. I'm going to show you a few other examples here, though. So just kind of like what we've already decided on, but now I want to see it as a design board. So what happens is you put in your project details first. That's typically like the first thing that we do with the design assistant, though you can jump into this process at any point. Okay, so if you're already beyond this and don't need it, use this design assistant for other things that it can help you with. So, what I do though is I put this in here and then it knows immediately after I give it the client information that it either needs to compile that information into a nice abbreviated format, very easy to follow throughout the project. I actually take that information, put it into my Doma's account to start a project, and I use the AI bot that my Doma has called Max, and I basically take that summarized information and import it into Max, and Max sets up my entire project for me, which is really great. I don't have to do anything from there. It's just, like reorganizing and restructuring our initial notes that can get kind of messy in the beginning, right? So, anyway, so I take that information, put it in here. It either spits out the full recap or it moves right on to creating the initial design board. So, this is really just supposed to be a conceptual design board. Dolly gets a little creative with the look of it. But if you like this, what you could do is potentially click on the image that it spits back. Go ahead over here to the top right. You'll see this little eye. You'll see this prompt right here, and you can grab that prompt and put it in Midjourney if you're a Midjourney user. So that's one fun feature because it really does create these great concept boards and flat lays. And then we can just have a conversation. Now generate a rendering of this space. I told it dining tables, it gets a little crazy with those, right? So now I went on to say, now create a piece of artwork that embodies the color palettes. Had a little trouble there, came out with another one. And then, we get to this one here. So I use these to basically like take art and then put them into Photoshop, and I create custom textures. I also will sometimes, if there's nothing in front of it, and I'll show you some other examples. If it's like a nice solo piece where I can edit it out, I will enlarge it and then actually use that art or change it a little bit in Photoshop and use it inside the space. So you can definitely generate color palettes and the whole nine yards, just starting with these conceptual images. So let's see another thing here. So here's another project that I had the design assistant do. And this is actually more for like the onboarding questionnaire, where if you're looking for flat lay color palettes or just, color palettes in general, you can just come here and start to create them. Okay. So what I kicked off this conversation with the design assistant about is we're creating a material board, interior design flat lay. We need selections for this Florida home. Kind of described what it is that we need on that design board. And here was the first version of that. I actually really liked that layout. I thought it did a nice job. So I was like, okay, let's play around with this. Let's see if we can just keep messing around with some different color palettes. So I got a blue and peachy one right there. And then right here we got a new version of like the green. And I'm simply just having conversation like, okay, now do it in blue. Okay, now do it inspired. So I said design a color palette, which I mistyped and it still understood. design a color palette that's inspired by the colors of the sunset. And this one actually just did that, which was very cool. We could technically take any of these images, put them into Canva or Photoshop, and we can use the color eyedropper tool, which like extracts the color. And then we would be able to get the hex codes that we can see right here. And we can actually turn those hex codes into paint chips. So if there's something that we liked, there's a website called Incoloripedia, and now it's paid. Recently, it started being paid, but definitely worth it. I think it's like $10 a year or something. And it translates your hex codes or RGB over to actual paint colors that you could potentially order, from Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moore, all of that stuff. So here's a starting point, right? We are now using the tools that we have to create and compile actual designs. This one came out really kind of looking like something I would have done in design school, where it was, not as high caliber, but more samples. So I said, ooh, that doesn't look so great. Let's do one more like the other boards. And it just kind of put those two together. You'll also notice here that I got two, though they are less quality than the other one here. I got two boards. Dolly just kind of does what it wants. So just know sometimes it's temperamental and it's like, I can't right now. I'm having a moment and you need to come back to it. It'll just do that. Like, I don't know if it's usage or what, but be prepared. Sometimes it happens. And then sometimes it'll give you two images, but you should really just expect one. Now with Midjourney, you're going to get four, but with Dolly, expect one. Be surprised if two come, okay? But it doesn't really matter because it is a conversation, right? So we can just keep generating images by chatting with it and kind of saying different things. So for this, it turned into like a color story of locations and, time of day. Got some crazy stuff in here that I wasn't really keen on. So I just kind of kept reprompting and getting it back on track. You'll find that with these design assistants, they're not perfect. Like this one is about 6 months old. Though I use it every day, there's going to be limitations. And sometimes it's going to forget to do one of its tasks. So you just need to remind it and it'll happen. The more we remind, the more it remembers and the better it gets. Okay, so don't get discouraged if it's not doing something immediately. We are still working on this. With everybody here using it now, it'll be trained faster. Here was another entry point to use this design assistant, and that was just to upload inspirational pictures that I already had. Potentially, this could be from your client onboarding questionnaire, some things that they've already added here. And then we've got, so for this one, I, gave it very simple information. Okay. It was more for showing you what it does after. So if you forget to include something in like the information that it needs to be able to create the imagery, then it will like prompt you or remind you or kind of recap what you've provided it. So for this one, I said using these inspirational images, create a detailed client profile with a hypothetical client. And then I gave, the location and a potential budget for the space that we're designing. So for this, I mean, if you're ever doing like, client avatar studies where like you want to create different avatars for potential clients that you're trying to attract, this would be a use case where like you could create a sample project that is your ideal client and kind of work with that as like a potential case study and use this as a design jumping off point and then kind of go from there. Is putting the somewhat restraints and restrictions like you would get with your normal client, but then you can develop this entire process. So here's the beautiful design board that I got in return. Like, honestly, probably one of my most favorite design boards that I've seen. To save this, you can just go ahead and click it and download. Depends on the type of computer that you're on sometimes too, where it might download the Dolly file, which is like a web file. So sometimes you might need to right click and then save image as. See, it's an XML file. So that might happen, okay? So we can come back here. Let me try it from this screen. That one's doing the Dolly again. So let's see if I can save this one. I'm looking to save it as a JPEG or a PNG. So sometimes, guys, it just is temperamental. So I go ahead and I print screen. Though I actually can use those web files. I can convert them like on my computer, but we don't always want that. So just screenshot does the trick if you are struggling with that and having an issue. Sometimes the design assistant has some errors at the moment. It'll work through it. Here's where I created some artwork based off that, and it's something that I could actually use to start to create motifs and, content, not content, textures, materials, all of those types of things for an actual, furnishings. Okay, and here is the last example that I'm going to show you. So this one had a project overview that I imported. Okay, so I had the information. I didn't include the client's name here. The information, the actual pieces, those types of things. And then it knows, okay, so we're going to recap. We're going to put this information here. We've got a timeline. We've got materials, fabrics, like all these details, right? Now, another thing that I've been training it to do, and it's getting better and better at this, is create a prompt for me right here. So yes, I can click on it. I can click that little eye. I can grab it, but I also want it to just be very predominant in the chat thread so that I can take this same one, go over and put it into Midjourney and get both iterations of what this room could look like. So this is more of a rendered concept. It went straight for that render and skipped the design board for some reason. It's probably something that I typed here, but I like it. It actually didn't do all these crazy dolly things like it typically does with over clutter. There's a lot, but it's okay. It didn't do excess lighting. I actually think I told it to put in some moldings. Typically, it would just do it anyway. And the color palette is honestly right on point and kind of with some of the art and pillows that I would be designing for this client myself using the art and print on demand process. So now it has, it tells me what's in the image, right? It also provided me with the prompt. And then it says, my next steps involve creating a mood board color palette to further refine the vision. So let's proceed with these steps. So it knows, right? It knows, but it does have to pause because it just created that image. So it's checking in. Are we good? Can we move forward? And I'm like, yep, let's create that design, that mood board now. It does give me written description of what it's putting in a lot of these images. It's helpful information, honestly. If you're kind of looking at why it happened and what attributes you could potentially also include in your design sourcing, it could be helpful. So here's the mood board version of this. Honestly, I could do this in Photoshop. It looks like a Photoshop board. So I was pleasantly surprised. I'm very happy. It did go backwards in this process for some reason. So if that happens where it doesn't immediately generate this and it goes to the render, just ask for it to do both, and that would be your next prompt there. And then we get, the written description, what's included. Again, I could click on it, put it over into the design board. If you ever wanted to reference something, start a reply on either something that ChatGPT said, like this, where I've highlighted here, I just kind of highlight one section, it will come out with these little quotations under that black bar, right here. And you can reply to just that reference to get further information and break it down a little bit. It's also really great if you're, doing outlines for blogs and need more content on stuff. That's a great use for that. Okay, so I just kind of stopped there and took a detour in this conversation. I was like, okay, well, I know we're not doing a bedroom, but what would a bedroom look like if we were to do it in the same style? Then it goes ahead and it just kind of creates material boards, like what would be embodied in this type of design. And this is what we got. Honestly, it's bizarre. And I've noticed that some of these they look more hodgepodge, like it almost went to Pinterest and kind of just took random design board ideas and then threw them all together. But you'll notice, remember that other one that had two and it was just lesser quality? It's almost like the one image just is better, but sometimes it's just going to give you two, and I don't know why. So I just stopped there with this image generation, and I switched gears and I kind of just said, okay, well, based off of this, with a budget of this, what should we allocate for each area? Now, I do have a very well-trained budget buddy that does like hyper like detailed breakdowns, and it's been programmed with like every single detail of every single room that you could possibly imagine for a good, better, best. But this is great as just something that is a good, better, best generalized budget breakdown for whatever the project is specifically. Now, if you're looking for something with more hyper detail so that you don't miss a detail at all in these rooms, then you're going to want to look for the Budget Buddy GPT. But this one is a great start. You might just find that you love this one and you're good with that. So that is just some of what the things that you can do with this design assistant. It is really optimized to integrate with Dolly, right? So to pull the imagery and also create the um, prompts that you can also use in Midjourney. But it's really great at organizing your ideas, writing them out in a way that, like, that could propel you to create blog post content. You could use it as a jumping off point for social media posts when you're sharing your project imagery. But overall, I mean, you can use this as a starting point for color palettes, for paint selections, for creating artwork, and then using that artwork to create your own palettes and your own designs for textiles that you can put on pillows, bedding, duvets, all those things. I do print on demand. You can also have your own private label collection. You can go to printers, have your motifs made there, and really entirely control your design process using AI as your jumping off point and using this design assistant as your jumping off point. So just going to leave you with this. Remember that it gets better and better. If it doesn't give you the information that you need right off the bat, ask it in a different way. Okay. But it has been programmed to do all of these things and really help you to organize and visually communicate in a much more elevated way with your clients. All right. Enjoy this one. It's one of my favorites.